Chapter 3, Section 1 of Cup of Gold by John Steinbeck. There were many glittering reputations along the coast of Darien and among the green Caribbean islands when Henry Morgan came to be a buccaneer. In the wine shops of Tortuga were tales of 1,000 fortunes made and spent, of fine ships taken and sunk, of gold and plate dumped on the docks like wood. The Free Brotherhood had grown to be a terrible thing since Pierre Le Cron, and a little band of hunters slipped out of the woods of Hispaniola and captured the vice-admiral of the Plate Fleet from a canoe. France and Britain and Holland had seen in these islands a good hermitage for their criminals, and for years they had unloaded worthless human freight on the Indies. There was a time in those old nations when anyone who could not give a good virtuous account of himself was crammed into a ship and sent off to be a bondservant to any man who would pay a small sum for him. And when their time was up, these people stole guns and warred on Spain. It was not strange, for Spain was Catholic and rich, while Huguenots and Lutherans and Church of England men were poor and out at heel. They fought a holy war. Spain had locked up the treasures of the world. If poor ruined beggars could be reaching a coin through the keyhole, who was the worse for it? Who minded except Spain? Surely England and France and Holland took little heed of it. Sometimes they provided the pirates with commissions against Aragon and Castile, so that you might come on a man who 10 years before had been sent out in a prison ship carrying the style of Captain by the grace of the King. France had the good of her wayward children at heart, for she sent out 1,200 women to Tortuga to be the wives of buccaneers. The whole 1,200 turned to a business more profitable than wifehood immediately they landed, but France could not help that. They had got their name, these buccaneers, of a time when they were nothing more than cattle hunters. There was a way of smoking meat by burning small bits of fat and flesh in the fire. This made the meat more savory than usual. It was called the boucan process, and from it the pirates were named. But after a time, these hunters came out of the woods in little, careful groups. Then bands formed, and then whole fleets of 8 or 10 vessels, and finally thousands assembled in Tortuga, and from that spot of safety buzzed about the flanks of Spain. And Spain could not combat them. Did she hang 10? 100 joined their ranks. So she fortified her towns and sent her treasures on the sea under the protection of warships filled with soldiers. The numberless vessels of the Spanish colonies were nearly all driven from the sea by fierce buccaneers. Only once in a year did the Plate Fleet sail out for home. There were fine names among the Brotherhood, and exploits to make Henry Morgan squirm with jealousy if he had not been so confident of overshadowing them all one day. Bartholomew Portuguese there was, who took a great prize, but before he could get away with it he was captured near Campeche. The gibbet was erected on the shore for his hanging. He watched them put it up from his prison aboard ship. And in the night before his execution, he stabbed his guard and swam away, supported by a keg. Before 8 days had passed, he came again with pirates in a long canoe, and stole the same ship away from the harbor of Campeche. He lost her, of course, in a storm off Cuba, but the story was nevertheless told with glee in the taverns. Roche Brasiliano was a Hollander with a chubby face. When he was young, he was driven from Brazil by the Portuguese, and from their colony he had taken his name. Curiously, he held no rancor against Portugal. His hatred turned on Spain. He was a kindly, gentle, beloved captain, so only there were no Spaniards about. His men worshipped him and drank no other toast but to his name. Once, when his ship was wrecked in Castilla de Oro, he killed most of a troop of Spanish horse and used their beasts to ride off on. When the men of Spain were near him, Roche was a foaming beast. It was told that once he roasted prisoners on green spits over a slow fire. As the rich shipping was driven from the sea, the buccaneers must be taking villages, and then even towns with forts. Lewis Scott pillaged Campeche and left it a black, smoking pile. L'Ollonais had come from the sables d'Olonne, and very rapidly he became the most feared man in the Western Ocean. He began with a real hatred for Spain and ended with a strong love of cruelty. He had pulled out tongues and carved his prisoners to pieces with his sword. The Spanish men would far rather have met the devil in any form than L'Ollonais. The whisper of his name emptied the villages in his path of every living unit. It was said that the mice fled to the jungle when he came. Maracaibo he took, and New Gibraltar and St. James de Leon. Everywhere he slaughtered men for the fierce love of it. Once, when the bloodlust was in him, he had commanded that 87 prisoners be bound and laid in a row on the ground. Then he walked down the line carrying a whetstone in one hand and a long sword in the other. That day he cut off 87 heads with his own hand. But L'Ollonais was not content with murdering the Spanish men. He went into the gentle country of Yucatan, where the people lived in ruined stone cities, and where the virgins went crowned with flowers. They were a quiet people in Yucatan, and their race was dying in an inexplicable decay. When L'Ollonais went away, the cities were heaps of stones and ashes, and there were no crowns anymore. The Indians of Darien were different, fierce and fearless and unrelenting. The Spaniards called them bravos and swore that they were untamable. They had been friends of the pirates because they so hated Spain, but L'Ollonais robbed them and murdered the tribesmen. These Indians waited many years for their vengeance, and at last they caught L'Ollonais when his ship had wrecked on the shores of their country. They built a fire and danced for hours, and then they burned the Frenchman's body bit by bit before his eyes, a finger and a pinch of flesh at a time. A lean French gentleman came into a tavern at Tortuga one night, and when they asked his name, seized a large rum keg and hurled it from him. "Bras de fer," he said, and no one ever questioned him farther. It was never known whether his name was hidden for a shame or a sorrow or a hatred, but all the coast came to know of him as a great brave captain. These were men who made phrases to be repeated. "No pray, no pay," the exterminator had bawled, and now everyone was saying it. When Captain Lawrence, in a small boat, was assailed by 2 Spanish frigates, he said to his men, "You have too much experience not to be sensible of your danger, and too much courage to fear it." This was a fine saying, and on the strength of it his followers captured the 2 Spanish ships and took them home to Goave. Not all were cruel or even violent men. Some had a curious streak of piety. There was Captain Watling, who made it a point to hold divine service every Sabbath, with the whole crew standing uncovered. Daniel once shot a sailor for an irreverence. These buccaneers prayed loudly before battle, and if they were successful, half of them trooped off to a captured cathedral to sing Te Deum, while the other half plundered the prize. Captains of ships maintained the strictest discipline among their men, swiftly punishing insubordination or any other wrongdoing which might interfere with their success. There were no such riots at sea as were later tolerated by Kidd and Blackbeard at Lafitte. But out of the whole history of the Brotherhood, one man towered. There was a Dutchman named Edward Mansvelt. In bravery and in soldiery he was preeminent, for he had taken Grenada and St. Augustine in Florida and St. Catherine's Isle. With a great fleet of ships he had gone cruising along the coasts of Darien and Castilla de Oro, taking what he might lay his hands on. But there was a power of dream in him. Out of his mob of ragamuffin heroes he wanted to make a strong, durable nation, a new, aggressive nation in America. As more and more of the buccaneers flocked to his command, his dream solidified. He consulted the governments of England and France. They were shocked and forbade him to consider such a thing. A race of pirates not amenable to the gibbets of the crowns? Why, they would be plundering everybody. He must not be thinking about it at all. But still, he went on planning and planning his new government. It would be started at St. Catherine's Isle. He settled a body of his men there and then went casting about for more to join his new nation. His ship was wrecked near the city of Havana, and Spaniards strangled Edward Mansvelt on the garrote. These were the men Henry Morgan had set about to lead, and confidently he saw no barrier. So only a man planned carefully and considered his chances. These stories and these men were well enough, but they fell short in the large actions. They were improvident and vain. They might help him one day. Mansvelt was living, and Bras de Fer was an old man when Henry Morgan went sailing with Black Grippo in the Ganymede. 1. There was excitement and curiosity in Port Royal when Morgan was fitting out the Ganymede for sea. Strange stores and unusual weapons were going into her hold. Drawn on by the quiet confidence of this young man, many sailors volunteered for his crew. The captain found 5 gunners of reputation in the port and signed them to go with him. When the Ganymede dropped her sails and slipped from the harbor, a crowd of idlers stood on the beach and watched her go. They cruised to the coast of Darien looking for prey, but the sea appeared to be swept clean of Spanish craft. One morning, near the port of Cartagena, they sighted the tall red hull of a trading ship. Captain Morgan hid his men. No soul was allowed to show himself. Even the steersman worked in a tiny house, while a dummy wheel swung idly on the deck. Then down on the Spanish boat they bore, and the Spanish crew was overwhelmed. Here came a boat and no man working her. It smacked of witchcraft, or of one of those nameless tragedies of the sea the sailors talked about. Perhaps a plague had killed all the crew and they could take and sell this ship, but when they were close, 3 masked guns spouted flame. They fired only at one spot, and when they had done, the rudder of the Spanish ship hung in splinters, and she floundered about in no control. Then Captain Morgan, hanging aft, out of range of her broadside, poured shot into her hull until the flag fluttered down. It was the first prize of his planning. A few days later, he brought up with another ship and ran alongside to board. The Spanish crew was massed against the bulwarks to repel the attack, and immediately the air was filled with clay powder pots, which landed in the thick group and exploded. The Spanish men ran screaming to the shelter of the hold to escape this flashing death. When Henry Morgan came at last to Tortuga, 4 prizes followed in his wake, and he had not lost a man. It was as easy as he had known it would be. Here were 4 monuments to his planning. One had only to do the unexpected thing quickly. This was the secret of successful war. Mansvelt was in Tortuga when Henry Morgan came, and his little eyes glittered as he looked at this plunder. Soon he sent for this new leader. "You are Captain Morgan, who took the 4 prizes in the harbor?" "Yes, sir, I am." "And how did you do this thing? The Spanish ships are strongly armed and wary." "I did it, sir, with my planning. Many nights have I considered how to do these things. I work with surprise, sir, when other men use only force." Mansvelt regarded him with admiration. "I am fitting out an expedition to take St. Catherine's Isle," he said. "Then I am going to form a republic of buccaneers who will fight with a patriotism. Would you like to be vice admiral of this expedition? I have some reputation for picking men." The name of Mansvelt was mighty on the seas, and Henry flushed with pleasure. "I would like it, sir," he said quickly. The fleet sailed out, and Captain Morgan was vice admiral. There was a fine assault. The ships threw in their ragged hordes, and slaughter walked on the walls. The island could not withstand the fierceness of the attack, and finally the fortress fell. Then the Dutch admiral drew up his government and left Henry Morgan in command while he went out to scour the world for recruits. He and his ship were lost and never heard from again. It was said the Spaniards strangled him in Cuba. Captain Morgan was now the paramount leader of the Spanish Main. Ships flew from the ways to join his fleets, to sail under his command and fight with him and share in his success. He went up against Portobello and sacked the town. The houses were burned and all the helpless citizens were plundered. When Captain Morgan's ship sailed off, the jungle was already creeping into the ruins. For 10 years he sailed about the ocean, among the islands and along the green coasts of tropic America, and his was the greatest name of all who had gone out for plunder. The pirates of the world came flocking to his reputation. People cheered him in Tortuga and Goave. Numberless men volunteered for every expedition. Now all the brotherhood waited for Captain Morgan to open a keg of liquor in the streets or to run wild through the town. He never did. Coldly he walked about, clad in a purple coat and gray silk stockings and gray shoes with bows. At his side hung a long rapier, no thicker than a pencil, in a scabbard of gray silk. At first the sailors strove to establish a comradeship with him, but he pricked them away with frigid insults. The lessons of the slaves lived on in him. He did not try to buy his popularity, and all the free brotherhood showered it upon him, cast their lives and their fortunes on the knees of his success. End of Chapter 3, Section 1. Chapter 3, Section 2 of Cup of Gold by John Steinbeck. 10 years of fighting and plundering and burning, and he was 30. His graying hair seemed to coil more closely to his head. Henry Morgan was successful. The most luck followed freebooter the world had known, and the men of his profession gave him that admiration he had craved. His enemies, and any man of Spain who had money was his enemy, shuddered at the mention of his name. They had placed him in their fears beside Drake and L'Ollonais. He had gone out with Grippo in the Ganymede, assured that when his guns roared into a Spanish hull, when he stood embattled on a Spanish deck with cries and clash of iron weapons about him, there would come that flaming happiness his heart desired. These things he had experienced, and there was not even content. The nameless craving in him grew and flexed its claws against his heart. He had thought the adulation of the brotherhood might salve the wound of his desire, that when the pirates saw the results of his planning and marveled at them, he would be pleased and flattered. And this thing happened. The men fairly fawned on him, and he found that he despised them for it, and considered them fools to be taken with such simple things. Henry had grown lonely in his glory. Old Merlin had spoken truth so long ago, for Captain Morgan had come to his success, and he was alone in his success, with no friend anywhere. The craving of his heart must lie crouched within him. All his fears and sorrows and conceits, his failures and little weaknesses must be concealed. These, his followers, had gathered to the cry of his success. They would leave him at the first small sign of weakness. While he was engaged in winning plunder, a little rumor had come stealthily across the isthmus, had floated among the islands and stolen aboard the ships. Men caught the whispered name and listened carefully. There is a woman in Panama, and she is lovely as the sun. They call her the Red Saint in Panama. All men kneel to her, thus said the whispering. The voice grew and grew until men in the taverns drank to La Santa Roja. Young seamen whispered of her in the dog watch. There is a woman in the cup of gold, and all men fall before her as heathen kneel before the sun. They spoke softly of her in the streets of Goav. No one had seen her. No one could tell the tint of her cheeks or the color of her hair. Yet in a few years every man in the wide, wild main had drunk to the Red Saint, had dreamed of her. Many had prayed to La Santa Roja. She became to every man the quest of his heart, bearing the image of some fair young girl left on a European beach to be gloriously colored by the years. And Panama was to every man the nest of his desire. It was a curious thing. In time, no speech among gathered men could end without mention of La Santa Roja. She was become a queer delirium in the minds of the rough pirates, a new virgin for their worship. Many said she was Mary, come to live on earth again, and they added her name in their prayers. Now, when Captain Morgan had taken Portobello, the governor of Panama was filled with admiration and wonder that such a ragged band of ill-ordered men and without uniforms could capture such a city. He sent a messenger asking for a small sample of the weapons which had made this thing possible. Captain Morgan took the runner to a small room that had escaped the general fire. "Have you seen the woman whom they call the Red Saint in Panama?" he asked. "I have not seen her, no, but I have heard of her. The young men put only the Blessed Virgin before her in their worship. It is said that she is lovely as the sun. What is her name besides La Santa Roja? I do not know. I have only heard that she is lovely as the sun. They tell in Panama that she came from Cordova and has been to Paris. It is said her family is noble. They tell how she rides great horses sitting astride in a meadow guarded with a thick hedge. It is said that in her hand a rapier is a living thing, and that she can fence more skillfully than any man. These things she does in secret, that no one may see the crime against her modesty." "Ah, well," said Captain Morgan. "If she be beautiful enough, what need has she of modesty? This modesty is only a kind of beauty patch, which is put on when there are visitors, an enthralling gesture. I should like to see her ride. And do you know nothing more of her? Only what they say in the tavern, sir, that she has stolen worship from the blessed saints." Captain Morgan dreamed long in his chair while the runner waited silently. At last Henry shook his head, as though to disengage it of cloying thoughts. He drew a pistol from his belt and gave it to the messenger. "Take this to Don Juan Perez de Guzman, and say that this is a sample of the weapons we have used in laying Portobello in the dust. But my other weapons are the strong hearts of my followers. I will not send him one of these, but I will bring him a great number, and tell him to keep the pistol for a year, when I myself will come to Panama to receive it from his own hands. Do you understand?" "I do, sir." And in a few days the runner came again, bringing the pistol back and a large square emerald set in a ring. "My master begs that you accept this stone as a token of his regard. He begs that you do not give yourself the trouble to come to Panama, for then his duty would overwhelm his admiration and force him to hang you to a tree." "It is a good message," said the captain. "A good, brave message. I should like to meet with Don Juan, if only at swords' points. It has been long since anyone defied me." "And did you learn more of La Santa Roja?" "Only what they tell in the streets, sir. I inquired closely for your benefit. I was told that in the streets she wears a thick veil that none may see her face. Some think she does this so that the poor men who meet her will not kill themselves for love. That is all I could learn." "Have you further messages, sir?" "Only repeat that I will go to the Cup of Gold within the year." End of Chapter 3, Section 2. Chapter 3, Section 3 of Cup of Gold by John Steinbeck. Through all his life, his will had been like an iron weather vane, steadfastly pointing, always, but never long in one direction. The Indies and the sea and pillage and glory all seemed to have failed him. He had touched all things, and watched them pale and shrivel at his touch, and he was lonely. His men regarded him with respect and sullen awe. They were afraid of him, and this state did not feed his vanity as once it had. He wondered if he might not make a friend among his followers. But the time he had dwelt alone in the castle of himself had been so long that this thought filled him with a curious, boyish embarrassment. Who among his followers might be his friend? He considered them, remembering their sullen scowls, their gleaming, avaricious eyes at the division of spoil. He felt nothing but contempt for them. But there was one whom he had noticed, a young Frenchman who was called Coeur de Gris. Captain Morgan had seen him in action, leaping about the deck like a supple animal while his rapier flicked out in lithe tongues of silver fire. He scorned a cutlass for the long, thin blade, and this young man answered his orders with a smile at Captain Morgan. There was respect in his eyes, surely, but no fear, no jealousy, and no suspicion. I wonder if this Coeur de Gris would be my friend, mused Henry Morgan. It is said that he has left a trail of broken hearts from Cuba to St. Kitts, and somehow for this I fear him a little. Captain Morgan sent for the young man, and when he was come found difficulty in speaking to him. How are you, Coeur de Gris? The young man was overwhelmed by any show of warmth from this captain. Why, sir, I am very well. Have you orders for me? Orders? No, I thought I would like to talk with you. That is all. To talk with me, sir. But to talk of what? Well, how are the many little loves you are reputed to have? The captain asked in an uneasy effort at joviality. Repute is kinder to me than nature, sir. Henry Morgan plunged to his purpose. Listen to me, Coeur de Gris. Can you not imagine that I may need a friend? Can you not think of me as a lonely man? Consider how all my followers are afraid of me. They come for orders, but never to pass a quiet time of day. I know I made this so. It was necessary once, for I had to build up respect before I could command obedience. But now there are times when I should like to be telling my thoughts and talking of something besides war and spoil. For 10 years I have ravaged the seas like a silent wolf, and I have no friend anywhere. I have chosen you to be my friend, first, because I like you, and second, because you have not a thing on earth you might be thinking I want to steal. Thus you may like me without fear. It is a strange thing how my men suspect me. I have given a strict accounting for every voyage, yet if I spoke to them as friends, they would beat their brains to discover my plot. And will you be my friend, Coeur de Gris? Why, certainly I will, my captain. And had I known of such a thing in your mind, I would have been for long. How may I serve you, sir? Oh, just by talking with me now and then, and by trusting me a little. I have no motive save my loneliness. But you speak and act like a gentleman, Coeur de Gris. May I ask of your family? Or do you draw this name about you like a cape, as so many do here on the Main? It is very simple to tell you of my family. It is said that my father was the great Bras de Fer, and who he was no one ever knew. The people gave me my name, remembering his. My mother is one of the free women of Goave. She was 16 when I was born. Hers was a very ancient family, but Huguenot in worship. Their holdings were destroyed in the murders of St. Bartholomew. Thus it came about that they were penniless when my mother was born, and she was picked up by the watch in Paris streets one day, and sent to Goave with a shipload of women vagrants. Bras de Fer found her soon afterwards. "But you say she's a free woman," said Henry Morgan, scandalized at this young man's apparent lack of shame. "Surely she has given up this practice now you are successful on the sea. You are taking home enough for both of you, and more." "I know I am," but she continues, "I do not mention it, for why should I interfere with what she considers a serious work? She is proud of her position, proud that her callers are the best people in the port, and it pleases her that, although she is nearly 40, she can more than compete with the young, unseasoned squabs who come in every year. Why should I change the gentle course of her ways, even if I could? No, she is a dear, lovely woman, and she has been a good mother to me. Her only fault is that she is filled with over-many little scruples. She nags at me when I'm at home, and cries so when I leave. She is dreadfully afraid that I may find some woman who may do me harm." "That is strange, is it not, considering her life?" said Henry Morgan. "Why is it strange? Must they have a different brain in that ancient profession? No, sir. I assure you that her life is immaculate. Prayers thrice a day, and there is no finer house in all Goave than hers. Why, sir, when last I went there, I took with me a scarf which fell to my lot in the division, a glorious thing of gossamer and gold. She would not have it. It belonged about the neck of some woman who put her faith in the Romish church, she said, and it would not be decent for a good Huguenot to wear it. Ah, she worries so about me when I'm off to sea. She is terribly afraid I may be hurt, but far more afraid of the tainting of my soul. Such is all my knowledge of my family, sir." Captain Morgan had stepped to a cupboard and brought out some queer little jugs with wine of Peru. There were 2 necks on each jug, and when the wine was poured out from one, a sweet whistling sound came from the other. "I took these from a Spanish ship," he said. "Will you drink with me, Curdegree?" "I should be very much honored, sir." They sat a long time sipping the wine. Then Captain Morgan spoke dreamily. "I suppose, Curdegree, that you will one day be stricken with the Red Saint, and then we shall have the bees of Panama buzzing out upon us. I have no doubt she is jealously guarded, as was Helen. You have heard of the Red Saint, have you not?" The young man's eyes were glowing with the wine. "Heard of her," he said softly. "Sir, I have dreamed of her and called to her in my sleep. Who has not? Who in all this quarter of the world has not heard of her? And yet who knows any single thing about her? It is a strange thing, the magic of this woman's name. La Santa Roja. La Santa Roja. It conjures up desire in the heart of every man, not active, possible desire, but the if I were handsome, if I were a prince kind of desire. The young men make wild plans, some to go disguised to Panama, others to blow it up with quantities of powder. They daydream of carrying the Red Saint off with them. Sir, I have heard a seaman all rotten with disease whispering to himself in the night, if this thing were not on me, I would go adventuring for La Santa Roja. My mother frets and frets there in Goave, lest I go mad and run to her. She is terrified by this strange woman. Go not near to her, my son, she says. This woman is wicked. She is a devil. Besides, she is without doubt a Catholic, and no one has ever seen her that we know of. We do not know certainly that there exists such a woman as the Red Saint in the cup of gold. Ah, she has spread the sea with dreams, with longing dreams. I've been thinking, sir, that perhaps sometime the cup of gold may go the way of Troy town on account of her." Henry Morgan had filled the glasses again and again. He was slumped forward in his chair, and a little crooked smile was on his mouth. "Yes," he said rather thickly, "she is a danger to the peace of nations and to the peace of men's minds. The matter is wholly ridiculous, of course. She's probably a shrewish bitch who takes her bright features from the legend. But how might such a legend be started? Your health, Curtigree. You will be a good friend to me, and true, I will, my captain. And again they sat silently, drinking the rich wine. But there is much suffering bound up in women, Henry Morgan began, as though he had just finished speaking. They seem to carry pain about them in a leaking package. You have loved often, they say, Curtigree. Have you not felt the pain they carry? No, sir, I do not think I have. Surely I have been assailed by regrets and little sorrows. Everyone has. But mostly I have found only pleasure among women. Ah, you are lucky, the captain said. You are filled with luck not to have known the pain. My own life was poisoned by love. This life I lead was forced on me by lost love. Why, how was that, sir? Surely I had not thought that you— I know how I must have changed so that even you laugh a little at the thought of my being in love. I could not now command the affection of the daughter of an earl. The daughter of an earl, sir? Yes, an earl's daughter. We loved too perfectly, too passionately. Once she came to me in a rose garden and lay in my arms until the dark was gone. I thought to run away with her to some new lovely country and sink her title in the sea behind us. Perhaps even now I might be living safe in Virginia, with little joys crowding my footstool. It is a great pity, sir. Curtigree was truly sorry for this man. Ah, well, her father was informed. On one dark night my arms were pinned to my sides, and she— oh, dear Elizabeth— was torn away from me. They placed me, still bound, in a ship, and sold me in Barbados. Can you not see, Curtigree, the bitterness that lies restlessly in my heart? During these years her face has followed me in all my wanderings. Somehow I feel that I might have made some later move, but her father was a powerful lord. And did you never go back for her after your imprisonment was done? Henry Morgan looked down at the floor. No, my friend, I never did. End of Chapter 3, Section 3. Chapter 3, Section 4 of Cup of Gold, John Steinbeck. The legend of the Red Saint grew in his brain like a powerful vine, and a voice came out of the west to coax and mock, to jeer and cozen Henry Morgan. He forgot the sea and his idling ships. The buccaneers were penniless from their long inactivity. They lay about the decks and cursed their captain for a dreaming fool. He struggled madly against the folding meshes of his dream and argued with the voice. May God damn La Santa Roja for sowing the world with an insanity. She has made cutthroats bay the moon like lovesick dogs. She is making me crazy with this vain desire. I must do something, anything, to lay the insistent haunting of this woman I have never seen. I must destroy the ghost. Ah, it is a foolish thing to dream of capturing the cup of gold. It would seem that my desire is death. And he remembered the hunger which had drawn him from Cambria, for it was duplicated and strengthened now. His thoughts were driving sleep away. When drowsiness crept in on the heels of exhaustion, La Santa Roja came in too. I will take Maracaibo, he cried in desperation. I will drown this lusting in a bowl of horror. I will pillage Maracaibo, tear it to pieces, and leave it bleeding in the sand. There is a woman in the cup of gold, and they worship her for unnameable beauties. Make the gathering at the Isle de la Vaca. Call in true hearts from the corners of the sea. We go to riches. His ships flew out to the Bay of Maracaibo, and the town was frantic in defense. Run into this bottle harbor. Yes, under the guns. Cannonballs cried through the air and struck up clouds of dirt from the walls. but the defense held ground. It will not fall? Then take it in assault. Powder pots flew over the walls, tearing and maiming the defenders in their burst. Who are these wolves? They cried. Ah, brothers, we must fight until we die. We must ask no clemency, brothers. If we fall, our dear city. Ladders rose against the fort, and a wave of roaring men swarmed over the walls. Ah, San Lorenzo, hide us, bear us away. These are no men, but devils. Hear me, quarter. Ah, Jesus, where art thou now? Throw down the walls, let no two stones stand together. There is a woman in the cup of gold, and she is lovely as the sun. Grant no quarter, kill the Spanish rats, kill all of them. And Maracaibo lay pleading at his feet. Doors were torn from the houses and the rooms gutted of every movable thing. They herded the women to a church and locked them in. Then the prisoners were brought to Henry Morgan. Here's an old man, sir. We are sure he has riches, but he has hidden them away, and we can never find any. Then put his feet in the fire. Why, he is a brazen fool. Break his arms, he will not tell. Put the whipcord about his temples. Oh, kill him and stop his screaming. Perhaps he had no money. There is a woman in Panama. Have you scratched out every grain of gold? Place the city at ransom. We must have riches after pain. A fleet of Spanish ships came sailing to the rescue. A Spanish squadron coming? We will fight them. No, we shall run from them if we can get away. Our hulls lag in the water with their weight of gold. Kill the prisoners. She is as lovely as the sun. And Captain Morgan sailed from broken Maracaibo. 250,000 pieces of eight were in his ships, and rolls of silken stuffs and plates of silver and sacks of spices. There were golden images from the cathedral and vestments crusted with embroidery of pearls, and the city was a fire-swept wreck. We are richer than we could have hoped. There will be joy in Tortuga when we come. Every man a hero. We shall have a mad riot of a time. La Santa Roja is in Panama. Ah, God, then if I must, I must. But I fear I go to my death. It is a dreadful thing to be attempting. If this is my desire, I must, though I die. He called young Coeur de Gris to him. You have distinguished yourself in this fight, my friend. I have done what was necessary, sir. But you fought finely. I saw you when we engaged. Now I have bade you my lieutenant in the field, my second in command. You are brave, you are sagacious, and you are my friend. I can trust you, and who among my men will bear this trust, if it be worth his while to fail? It is a great honor, sir. I will pay you surely with my fidelity. My mother will be very pleased. Yes, said Captain Morgan, you are a young fool, and that is a virtue in this business as long as one has a leader. Now the men are straining to get back that they may spend their money. If it were possible, they would be pushing the ships to hurry them. What will you do with your money, Coeur de Gris? Why, I shall send half to my mother. The remaining sum I shall divide in two. Part one shall put away, and on the other I expect to be drunk for a few days, or perhaps a week. It is good to be drunk after fighting. Drunkenness has never been a pleasure to me, the captain said. It makes me very sad, but I have a new venture turning in my brain. Coeur de Gris, what is the richest city of the Western world? What place has been immune from the slightest gesture of the Brotherhood? Where might we all make millions? But, sir, you do not think. Surely you cannot consider it possible to take. I will take Panama, even the cup of gold. How may you do this thing? The city is strongly guarded with walls and troops, and the way across the isthmus is nigh impassable but for the burro trail. How will you do this thing? I must take Panama. I must capture the cup of gold. The captain's jaw set fiercely. Now Curtigree was smiling quietly. "Why do you grin at me?" demanded Captain Morgan. "I was thinking of a chance remark I made a little time ago that Panama was like to go the way of Troy town. Ah, this nameless woman is in your mind. Dismiss her. It may be there exists no such woman. But then, sir, we are rich enough of this last spoil. It would be no evil thing to grow richer. I am tired of plundering. I would rest securely." Curtigree hesitated a time while his eyes were covered with a soft veil. "I am thinking, sir, that when we come to Panama, every man will be at his friend's throat over the Red Saint." "Oh, you may trust me to keep order among my men. Strict order, though I hang half of them to do it. A while ago I sent word to Panama that I would go there, but I did it as a joke, and I wonder now whether they have been fortifying themselves. Perhaps they, too, thought it a joke. Go now, Curtigree, and speak to no man of this. I make you my ambassador. Let the men throw their gold away. Encourage gambling, here, now, on the ship. Give them an example at the taverns, an expensive example. Then they will be driven to go out with me. I must have an army this time, my friend, and even then we may all die. Perhaps that is the chief joy of life, to risk it. Do my work well, Curtigree, and it may be one day you will be richer than you can think." Young Curtigree stood musing by the mast. Our cold captain has been bitten by this great nebulous rumoring. How strange this pattern is. It is as though the Red Saint had been stolen from my arms. My dream is violated. I wonder, when they know, if every man will carry this feeling of a bitter loss, will hate the captain for stealing his desire. End of Chapter 3, Section 4. Chapter 3, Section 5 of Cup of Gold by John Steinbeck. Sir Edward Morgan led forces against St. Eustatius, and while the battle raged, a slim brown Indian slipped up and drove a long knife into his stomach. The lieutenant governor set his lips in a straight hard line and crumpled to the ground. "My white breeches will be ruined," he thought. "Why did the devil have to do it just when we were getting on so nicely? I should have got special thanks from His Majesty, and now I shall not be here to receive them. Heaven, he chose a painful place." And then the full tragedy struck him. "An ordinary knife," he muttered, "and in the stomach. I should have preferred a sword in the hand of an equal. But a knife in the stomach. I must look disreputable with all this blood and dirt on me, and I cannot straighten up. Christ, the wretch struck a sensitive spot." His men sadly bore him to Port Royal. "It was unavoidable," he told the governor. "Slipped up on me with a knife and stabbed me in the stomach. Such a little devil he couldn't reach any higher, I suppose. Report the affair to the Crown, will you, sir? And please do not mention the knife or the stomach. And now, will you leave me with my daughter? I shall be dying soon." Elizabeth stood over him in a darkened room. "Are you hurt badly, father?" "Yes, quite badly. I shall die presently." "Nonsense, papa. You are only joking to excite me." "Elizabeth, does it sound like nonsense, and have you ever heard me joke? I have several things to speak of, and the time is very short. What will you do? There is little money left. We have been living on my salary ever since the king made his last general suggestion for a loan." "But what are you talking about, papa? You cannot die and leave me here alone and lost in the colonies. You cannot do it." "Whether I can or not, I shall die presently. Now, Let us discuss this matter while we can. Perhaps your cousin, who has come to such fame through robbery, will care for you, Elizabeth. I am pained at the thought. But it is necessary to live. Very necessary. And after all, he is your cousin. I will not believe it. I simply will not believe it. You cannot die. You must stay with the governor until you can meet your cousin. Tell him the exact standing of the matter. No fawning, but do not be too proud. Remember, he is your own blood cousin, even though he's a robber. His heavy breathing filled the room. Elizabeth had begun to cry softly, like a child who cannot quite tell whether or not it is hurt. Finally, words were forced from Sir Edward's lips. I have heard that you can tell a gentleman by the way he dies, but I should like to groan. Robert would have groaned if he had wished. Of course, Robert was queer, but then he was my own brother. He would have shrieked if he had felt like it. Elizabeth, will you please leave the room? I'm sorry, but I must groan. Never speak of it. Elizabeth, you promise never to speak of it. And when she came again, Sir Edward Morgan was dead. End of Chapter 3, Section 5.